Good evening. Today on Free Field Training, we're going to talk about how 9mm just isn't as good as most people think that it is, and what that has to do with our choices of handguns and rifles for particular jobs. I own many 9mm pistols. I use one as a duty weapon at work full time as a cop and have for quite a while now, and I'm very happy with it. But the fact of the matter is that 9mm pistols are just not that good. And 9mm in general just isn't as good as people think it is. Before everybody starts lambasting me in the comments, this video is sponsored by Safe Life Defense. Safe Life Defense makes an entire line of police duty equipment, all sorts of stuff, from body armor to gloves to belts and all of that, and we really appreciate their support. There is a link and a coupon code down in the description down below. If you use that link and coupon code, you save a little bit of money and it helps the channel out. So go check that out if you're in the market for any of that type of gear. Now, 9mm is the industry standard, and there's a reason it's the industry standard. It's because advances in handgun technology have made it a really good compromise between capacity, size, weight, and terminal effectiveness. And no one's arguing that. It is a very good compromise for capacity, size, and weight and terminal effectiveness for use in personal defense by people who are well trained in its use. And of course, if you look at your average cop or security guard or armed professional or person who's concealed carrying, your average person who's actually carrying a firearm every day is probably going to be well trained enough to get the good use out of 9mm that's out there when you give them good ammo in a competent handgun. The problem is that when we take all of the data that we've assembled about good ammo, good handgun, competent shooter, and we try to extend it to other things, we get into the territory where we have things in police magazines and gun rags advocating for pistol caliber carbines for serious purposes. Now, pistol caliber carbines, especially 9mm pistol carbines, have been popular in the past before, and they will be again, and they will be for a long time for a variety of uses. But I'm here to tell you today that they are the improper tool for police and security work. And I get a lot of comments and questions over on my Instagram page about using pistol caliber carbines, especially for security work, because one of the advantages of a pistol caliber carbine is that it uses the same ammo that a person would normally be carrying in their handgun, or at least could potentially use the same ammo in the same magazines that a person would ordinarily be using in their handgun. That means that all of the magazines that they're carrying will also work in the handgun. It also means that the ammunition that they're carrying theoretically in their handgun would also work in the carbine. It also means that you can shoot them on indoor ranges, which has a very positive effect on people's ability to actually practice with the guns that you're going to be using on the street. So on the surface, if we take the information that we have about 9mm in actual street performance and in the metrics that we get in a laboratory and in energy numbers, and we compare it to other handgun rounds, we have something that's very competent, and we think, okay, well, I'm going to put this into a rifle, and then I have a 9mm I can hit with, and that's always the argument. Occasionally, we get people that even advocate for pistol caliber rounds in lever action rifles for police use. Now, that actually comes up in a lot of the police magazine rag things and articles and stuff. And the problem that you get into is that the ammunition that we're using in handguns, the ammunition that we've got all of that data that says, hey, this is a really good compromise between, weight, capacity, size, all of that, and we can shoot it indoors, so it's a 9mm we can hit with. That was all derived using handguns. Originally, duty handguns, now concealed carry handguns, but the 9mm ammunition is designed for things in that platform, that size. All of the data that we have about putting defensive ammunition, especially 9mm hollow point bonded or monolithic copper defensive ammunition today through rifle barrels, tells us that it performs worse than it does out of handgun barrels on average. If you have a 4.5, 5-inch handgun firing a particular 9mm round, it's going to perform better than it would out of a 16-inch barrel on a rifle. Out of a 16-inch barrel, the bullets that are designed in that cartridge to expand at a particular velocity. Let's say you're getting 11 or 1200 feet a second. If you push them to 16, 1700 feet per second, they're going to open faster. They're going to not penetrate as deeply. And now you have issues with lack of penetration. And it sounds counterintuitive, but you have issues of lack of penetration because the velocity is too high for the bullet that you're launching. So if you just think you're going to take whatever handgun mag you have, you've got a Ruger PC-14, whatever, PC-9 thing, and you're going to lock your Ruger handgun mag or Smith & Wesson handgun mag or Glock handgun mag into it, and you're going to use that same ammo in the carbine that you're carrying, you're not going to get as good of performance. It's going to be shallow penetrating through intermediate barriers and that have some give to them, and also in more living objects. And so our best performance that we're going to get for police and security work, if we're going to use a long gun, is going to be rifle calibers and shotgun calibers. Those are things that are proven through street performance, through metadata of after action reports, through everything that you're going to hear from a coroner or a doctor, through energy numbers, through just the basics of physics. If you push a small bullet at 2,800 feet per second versus a large bullet that is not designed for it pushed at 1,400 feet per second, you're going to get more energy. You're going to get more energy out of the rifle cartridge. Shotguns work on the same premise, especially shotgun slugs work on the same premise as handgun rounds. If you have 12 gauge double-aught buck, it's about like shooting as many pellets are in your double-aught buck is like firing 32 ACP approximately at someone with just a round lead ball, like a lead bullet, unjacketed lead bullet at somebody. So if you've got 12 pellet double-aught buck, it's like shooting somebody 12 times with 32 ACP. Very effective. A slug is like a handgun bullet, but enormous. A 1 ounce lead slug. These are way more effective than any 9mm round is ever going to be. So while 9mm is pretty effective as a duty handgun round, it is the one that I chose and the one that I use. With modern ammunition and with good guns, it's great. When you start extending it into pistol caliber carbines, you're not helping yourself ballistically at the far end. And I have a hard time believing that you're going to get so much better shooting a carbine within the envelope that most people are using it at by shooting it at an indoor range that it's going to make up for the ballistic effectiveness of using something like 223 in most circumstances. So that's my dissertation today. I've got Instagram Live going. I've got YouTube Live going on here. We're going to take some comments and questions from them and hopefully wrap it up in a reasonable amount of time. I'm going to start off with the YouTube comments and questions. We're going to see what everybody has to say. Caliber debates always get a little silly with people. I will put some links down below of some of the scholarly articles that you can peruse to understand why when you push a 9mm bullet too fast, you end up getting less performance. And even a 9mm in its best performing, like the barrel sizes it's absolutely designed for, versus a 223 and a compromised barrel size, there's no comparison in the energy numbers and the effect on target. Well, that should have pissed off enough people. Let's go. Russ Hamilton says, hi, hello. Sergeant Sly says, I've been contemplating the viability of 5.7 for body armor defeat, specifically for SROs, since we can get the more viable LE, military/LE only loads. That's an interesting concept. The problem is that even getting those loads as a law enforcement agency is fairly hard, and the effectiveness of those rounds once they strike, once they get through armor and get to the person, isn't all that great. When you look at the numbers from organizations that have actually used it, most of them don't hang on to them very long, or they use them in rifle-sized guns, or at least SBR-sized guns. They're not using them in pistols, so it might not be the best performing option for you, as good a performing option for you as you think it is in penetrating armor. And realistically, if you're talking about a situation where you might have an armored encounter where a person is purposefully attacking an organization or group or facility, the idea that they were going to have armor that would defeat armor-piercing 5.7 isn't astounding. It's nothing unusual because 5.7 was designed to defeat the armor of 30 years ago, not the armor of today. And most body armor today, like this vest, is a 3A+, and it stops most 5.7 rounds that we've been able to find. You get into SS-109, the black tip type of stuff that's designed specifically for armor penetration. It might punch through it. I haven't been able to get a hold of any to try, but even if it did, what you have coming out of the other side of the armor isn't going to be as effective as you think. And for that, you're giving up the effectiveness of the round in general. You're going to be poking little tiny holes through people that aren't going to do a whole lot of damage as they're punching through. At least not as much as you think you are until you get into rifle size. So I'd be careful about making 5.7 the be all and end all solution for that. A lot of the agencies that got into that got rid of it really fast. He says not a perfect solution, but SROs can't exactly have quick, easy access to a rifle like Patrol does. And you know what? There are some solutions to that. None of them are really great. But in that circumstance, if I was doing that job, I still don't think I would go with a 5.7 round out of a pistol. I have never been impressed with the performance either against armor or against soft targets of 5.7 out of a pistol. Well, White Dragon Security says 40 Smith& and Wesson and 357 SIG done. So I've talked before on the channel about why cops use 40, and that was many years ago when a lot of cops used 40. It's fallen out of favor since then, and thankfully so. Most agencies have caught on with the trends of ammunition and are no longer using non-bonded cup and core ammunition like we were 10, 15 years ago, and they've moved on to better things, at least bonded ammo in velocities and set up for handguns where it's going to work better, and there's no reason to have 40 or 357 SIG. So the problem with 40 is that in 9 millimeter size pistols, it tends to blow them up. Right now, at least faster than it would normally. And right now, Glock, if you get a brand new Glock 22, the brand new Glock 22s don't fit in old Glock 22 holsters, not backward compatible. And that's what most agencies that are using 40 still are going to be using. And they don't fit in the new Glock 17 holsters. They're actually completely different sized, which helps nobody. So 40 is the hardest round to get into right now. 357 SIG, I have a 357 SIG here. I have it mostly for armor testing, working with Safe Life Defense and a couple other companies that make body armor. The problem with 357 SIG is it is just a hopped up 9 millimeter, and it's expensive because no large agencies really picked it up to drive the price down. You have to order millions and millions of rounds of a cartridge to drive the price down. And so if you're using 357 SIG, you're using it in kind of a niche environment. And most of those niche environments where you're going to need the extra performance of 357 SIG, it's going to give you something viable over 9 millimeter. You'd be better off with 10 millimeter. And most of those, what I would use 10 millimeter for is a woods gun where you need the extra performance out of the handgun and you want more capacity than 6 rounds out of something like a 44 mag. I've got all of them in the stable here, but 357 SIG is literally my least used round. I find the least things in its performance envelope that it does best. Shays Crocker says our local PD wanted to do something like that, but logistics got in the way. Well, sometimes it's for the best. People get the good idea fairy comes out and they want like lever action rifles for patrol division because you can reach out a little further to 30-30 or things like that. We'll put rails on it, silly things like that, or using handgun ammunition for 16-inch carbines. My PD and most of them by me have gotten rid of MP5s. A lot of agencies around me had MP5s and had them since the 80s. And the more they've been tried to find a niche for them, a role for them to be used in, the less we find that they're actually effective at pretty much anything except really close quarters. And in those circumstances, you're better off in those close quarters with just a short 223. It does more. A 9-inch barrel or 10-inch barrel 223 is going to do better for you than a 9 or 10-inch barrel 9 millimeter. And full auto is almost useless for most law enforcement applications. So that's kind of where we stand with that. Sometimes it's a saving grace that the logistics got in the way of a bad idea. Sergeant Slice says, unrelated, any advice for lateral officers might make a good video series idea. I will definitely take that into consideration for another live stream. Matt Collins says, what about the old school idea that plus P plus federal 9 PBLE is the best still? I've carried it for years after seeing ballistic tests and autopsy reports. Okay, so the thing is that your monolithic copper rounds are the things that we're getting the best performance out of overall when we look at the street performance data on a metadata scale, right? Like, because no two gunfights are going to be the same, no two environments are going to be the same. When we look at everything in aggregate, like solid copper 9 millimeter rounds and 45 ACP rounds do best going through windshields. They stay most straight. They deflect the least. They're the least likely to have abnormalities in the round. They are sometimes lighter by small amounts. When you get into the same performance metrics, you can get out of a 124 or 125 what it would normally take a 147 to get as far as penetration. It's just they're kind of the sweet spot right now. And so without knowing the specifics of that particular load, if you've used it for years and years and years and years and years, it behooves you to go look at other rounds and what other performance metrics are out there today. If you've used the same 9 millimeter round for more than 20 years, go look at the other things that are out there because you're probably going to find something that's going to work better for what you're doing with it. Ian Neves says, so what would you say about MP5 style rifles and pistols? I was thinking about getting those for our armored truck job. Also, what are your thoughts on super light ammo like Liberty defense ammo? I've shot a lot of Liberty civil defense, so I'll take them backward forward since we covered the MP5 thing. Liberty civil defense and other of those really light rounds, they work for a very particular application. The two applications that they work well for that I've seen real data on is penetrating light armor, light soft armor. They will penetrate a lot. They really dig into most 3A vests, if not punch all the way through them. And the other thing is that it allows you to have ammunition for your gun that's extremely light. So on very, very small, very, very light 9 millimeter pistols, if you want to reduce the weight down of the ammunition, a 55 grain, because remember, most of the weight of your ammo is in the actual bullet itself. If you reduce the weight of that bullet more than in half, you're going to reduce the weight of the gun in total while you're carrying it with the full load of ammo. So there is something to be said for that, but those are the only two really niche applications for it. And I haven't seen any really good street performance data on those types of niche ammos as far as how they're working against actual people on the street and actual encounters. And if anybody has any that I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me a link over on Instagram or email or something to let me know how Liberty Civil Defense and similar light for caliber rounds are doing on the street. But I've never seen anything good on it. Until I see otherwise, that's the best I have to tell people. As far as a short pistol style MP5s and stuff, for armored car application, really most places where you're going to have a high risk of getting in a shooting in an armored car, you're also going to have pretty restrictive laws on what armored car drivers are going to use. And you don't have to like it and you don't have to dislike it, but it's the reality of it is like in my area, in the Chicagoland area, we've got very serious restrictions on handgun capacity, what types of firearms people can have, what counts as an assault weapon and is banned, and those apply also to armored guards. And so in those environments, there's a strong stance to be taken that if you're going to be using a long gun, maybe you should use something that from your personal financial situation or for the company's financial situation is going to be something that you're going to be able to use long term and is going to give you the best effect possible. And for armored guards, if people are going to see that you have a long gun, if this is something that's going to come out on a call, which I've seen occasionally with armored guard services in really bad circumstances, like they know this bank's been hit a couple times. My recommendation for them is something in a nickeled Marine Magnum of some kind. Remington made a bunch for a long time. I think Mossberg had some. I think there were even Maverick 88s that were made in the nickeled mag tubes and barrels and stuff and receivers. Having that visibility and the fact that there's definitely a long gun there might be a better way to go. And the ammo that's coming out of it, whether you choose slugs, number 4 buck, or double aught buck, is going to be more effective than what you're going to get on, a 9 millimeter pistol with the banana mag hanging out the bottom or a brace or stock or whatever else that you're going to have on it. And even if it's legal where you're at now, it may become illegal sometime in the very near future, which, means you can't have it out. And if something does happen and you happen to have it, you're going to be in a more serious circumstance when you're talking with prosecutors, state's attorneys, the police, things like that. So that's my recommendation for armored car drivers, given what I've seen and from the things that I've talked to armored car drivers about. Just because something looks cooler doesn't mean it's better. Keep that in mind. Nathan S. says, my department uses 9mm Spear Gold dot 147 grain hollow points. Amazing ballistics. What kind of round do you prefer for 9mm? That one works really well. It works really well. Most of your 124s, 125s, most of your bonded and monolithic rounds, almost all of them work really well, especially out of a duty size handgun. You start getting into smaller handguns and you have to look more thoroughly into independent testing. Lucky Gunner has a whole YouTube channel on here. I watch his stuff all the time because he tests things in a fairly repeatable manner to show you, like, hey, I know that this might work really well out of a 5-inch barrel. How's it going to do out of a 2-inch barrel? How's it going to do out of 1.87, 1.87-inch barrel that people are actually using for their application? But for duty size, almost everything that's on the market that has come out in the last 20 years is good ammo, as long as it's in the normal range, 124, 125, 147s, things like that. Hollow point ammunition. What's your thoughts on the Glock 36s, 45 ACP? I believe that's the little tiny guys. If you're bound to 45 ACP, if you like 45 ACP, or you're in an area where you can't carry modern hollow point ammunition, there are some areas where you're restricted in capacity, or you're restricted in what type of ammunition you can use. You can't use hollow points. 45 ACP is still a completely viable round, hence my video, in defense of the Glock 21. Back when, during the assault weapons ban years, when you were limited to 10 rounds, everybody agreed that 45 ACP was the best until they could have something different. Until they could have 20 rounds in their handgun. 45 ACP was the best. And that's why we have some pistols like the Smith & Wesson 45 ACP full-size duty pistols, the M&P series. They're limited to 10-round capacity of 45 ACP. They were made for that time period and for those restricted environments. And for those restricted environments, that's a very excellent pistol that you should look into. The Glock 36, you need something a little smaller. I believe that's the little subcompact one. You need something smaller in that environment. Wouldn't be a bad move. Frog Gamer says, has a department actually been silly enough to consider lever action? Automatic and semi-automatic seems like better than every other firing mode. I am not aware of anybody that has bought them and issued them, but I know of places who will allow their officers to carry lever action rifles. I think it's silly. I would not do so myself unless it was entirely for laughs, for some event. Like, we were going to go to a cowboy action shooting event. I was like, look, I put rails on this lever action. We're going to shoot cowboy action shooting as like a public statement, like we're going to go to this event as the police department. I don't see any real application or purpose, but I know there's places that allow it. And I know there's guys, believe it or not, I have seen one guy carrying a lever action rifle on the street. Jake Judson, I'm sorry, says, can you fit a backpack panel in a plate carrier? I'm trying to make an ultralight vest, not too worried about getting shot. Please and thank you, Tommy. If you're not too worried about getting shot, then why are you putting armor into your system? And if you don't have armor in your system, why are you wearing a plate carrier? There are better systems for carriage of stuff than plate carriers. I know they are the thing du jour right now, but there are panels like this. This was cheap on Amazon. A company sent this to me quite a while ago. If I find the tag, I will give them a shout out. Where's the tag? Oh, here it is. One Tigris. This has been in long-term testing for quite a while. It is a panel big enough to put some pistol and rifle mags on, some medical equipment, and maybe some granola bars or extra bottle of water on it. And then this is a strap system. It's designed to sit high on your chest. So if you've got a bunch of stuff on molly underneath on your vest and you need to put more stuff on, you can take this, throw it over the top, and clip it on. These types of chest rigs exist. And if you don't need armor, if you're not worried about getting shot at, and you're just going to carry stuff, extra stuff, either for work or for pleasure, I don't see any reason to wear a plate carrier and get sweaty. This takes up a lot less space on your chest, and I would rather have a square this size on my chest that's sweaty than the whole front and back. That's just me though. If you're just in it for the cool, you're in it for the walls and the cool points, then all you have to do is find a soft panel, backpack panel, whatever, that's size to the same size as your carrier, which you're going to know by they come in, 11 by 14, 9 by 10, sizes like that. Find the size that fits the carrier that you have and slide it in, and it'll fit. They're thinner than most plates that plate carriers are made for. Uh, Even Neve says we are located in Tennessee and handguns are allowed, but our company doesn't want to issue long guns. A few of our trucks have been robbed with AR pistols, so we've been thinking as in truck gun. Again, I appreciate your awesome help and information. Any of your videos come across, is always a good view. I don't know what your circumstances are, but in those circumstances, if I was in your position, I would try integrating some type of rifle protection to the front of the vest. But also, if I was an armored car driver and someone approached with a rifle, I think I would just drop the money and get back in the truck if I could. Right? Like, I know that's not always an option, but it should probably be your first defense as an armored car driver. That gun and that vest and stuff, like, that's there to protect you from people robbing you, not the money. The money is insured. Don't exchange your life for the company's money. That doesn't make sense to do. James Maxwell says, if I was in a jurisdiction with those sort of restrictions, then a 10 millimeter 357 Magnum, ideal in end frame, would be best. Well, not necessarily. 357 is a good round, but you're talking about 8 rounds versus 11 in a 10 mil, the full size 10 millimeter Glocks, a Glock 20. I think I'd rather have the 10 millimeter than 357 SIG in that case. But also you can get, 45 is very effective, and it does in handguns lead to you're going to practice more and therefore get better at hitting. And with handguns, shot placement, it might not be everything, but it's a lot. Because handguns do not cause the big cavity of damage. The volume of damage done is a lot smaller than there is for rifles and shotguns. Cheeseburger XJ says, I'm looking to have a larger carry gun, Glock 17 size. Would you go with a 40 over a 9 or just step it up to a 10 millimeter? Excuse me. Realistically, if you're picking your ammunition, get good ammo for the 9 and call it a day. You're going to shoot it better. Ammunition between 49 and 10 millimeter is very close in performance today. And if you can pick your own ammo, there's no reason to go with one of those over 9 for personal protection against people. And that's coming from a guy that up until a few years ago carried a 40 caliber Glock 35, owns a couple 10 millimeters, and currently carries a 9 on the street. You can get more ammunition in it. There's currently like 22, 23, 24 round 9 millimeter duty size handguns that you can look into if you're worried about capacity. And you can get really, really good performance out of the 9 mil, especially if you go with a 4.5 or 5-inch barrel pistol. Ben Hansen, what's your view on a private citizen who's legally carrying a pistol, who's also carrying a legally purchased sound suppressor? That gets into a whole bunch of legal issues that you should probably talk to an attorney about, because it looks odd for someone to be carrying a pistol with a suppressor on it, just as like their everyday carry. So if you should get into something, you should understand that might be an issue. And also, state laws vary on what they allow for concealed carry. So you check your local laws, and then I would check with a competent attorney on what they suggest about your carry pistol having a suppressor on it. Because that's going to change given circumstances and where you live. JMS says 9 millimeter is good, no doubt. It's good for its job, right? It's like a Corvette is good for being fast. It's good for its job, no doubt. It's like saying a Corvette is good for getting places fast on the highway. It's not so good in twisty curves all the time, right? A WRX might be better for twisty curves. A BMW that's got all-wheel drive or an Audi might be better for twisty curves, right? But they're all pretty terrible at being dump trucks. I think we would all agree. If you have to tow a boat, you don't want any of those cars. So it's about picking the thing that works for the application that you're in. So 9 millimeter ain't that great. It's not great at being a rifle round. If you compare it to rifle rounds, it's not good. Just like a Corvette, if you compare it to an F-350 in hauling capacity, ain't that good. Ian News says, some of our armored trucks aren't armored at times when they break down. Yeah, well, I, there's only so much you can do, right? Like you're rolling the dice no matter what you do. So my recommendation with that would be to have a plan, right? If you're in a truck that's actually armored, it's not just a big white van, then I would get in the truck and start driving away and call the police. That's the best you're going to be able to do. If you can get back into a big armored box and they can take all the money, then they don't need you. They don't want you, they want the money most of the time. If bullets start flying, you do the best that you can. And if you're in an area where you have a choice between life in prison and 10 years in prison and just driving away, I would recommend driving away over the other two, wouldn't you? Jim S. says, why does U.S. law enforcement carry toothpicks baton without push release in Europe? We have good baton. Yeah, you guys do. I don't know. I think somebody started marketing friction lock batons quite a while ago, and then everybody bought them, and then everybody's had bad experiences with them. And so now when I talk about, there are good batons out there, everybody goes, they're all garbage. Well, they're not all garbage. It's just we happen to use garbage for a while, and now they have to become popular again. And they're going to become popular again because the stick is like the law enforcement tool du jour, like the first one that we ever had. We've got some agencies that got rid of their friction lock batons and went back to just straight stick batons, which is not a bad move if you can have the straight stick baton where you need it. The push button batons are becoming popular in the US again. Sean Ricky says, I bought my department Glock 23. I couldn't pass it up for the price. I carry 155 grain hollow points in it off duty. It'll still get the job done. Jake Judson, the gentleman who was talking about armor before, says, I'm a security guard. I'm required to wear body armor. I want a lighter setup than Safe Life Hyperline. I know that the Hyperline backpack panels would be lighter than the regular Hyperline vest. As far as I know right now, the only, Hyperline is probably the thinnest. It's one of the lightest vests on the market. I think, who was it that had one? There's one that got tweaked and it's lighter, but it's really, really expensive. Backpack panels, where you get it with backpack panels is you're losing a lot of protection area. If you put a plate carrier on, so this is an Agilite K19, okay? Put a plate carrier on. This is the only space that's protected. Dangler thing, that's not armor. This is the only armor, right? If we put that plate up against soft armor that's wrapped around your body, sorry about the jiggling, you can see there's significantly more area being protected there. This isn't protected, just the plate area is. These wings, right? All the way up here. So all the way down there and all the wings all the way around your body. It's significantly more protective surface for you than a plate is. So if all you're doing is making sure you can follow policy and you don't think you're going to get shot and you want to put a backpack panel in a plate carrier, then yeah, that probably would be a really, really light solution. But I don't think it makes any sense. It would totally be something you're doing just for compliance because you're losing a lot of surface area and using an armor that doesn't vastly increase the performance over most 3A armor. Mr. McKeer says, my problem is The problem I'm having is getting enough range time. Ammo is just insanely expensive and really trying not to shoot all that I buy. LOL. Dry fire exists. I've done videos on how to do dry fire safely and effectively. The Mantis X system exists. You can dry fire and still get good feedback on, at least on your trigger press. There's several like SIRT pistols, have SIRT pistols, have a little laser so you can put a target up on the wall. It's a non-gun and you can aim and fire the non-gun. It has a pretty close trigger pull to what you get on like a Glock or a Walther or a SIG or something like that. And you can practice shooting pretty much anywhere. There are lots of options where if you figure the price of a case of ammo, you can get that and shoot it almost forever. Those are really good options, especially if you live in a city or an area that you're pretty restricted on how much ammo you can shoot or you're actually money restricted. It's one of the few cases where spending a little bit of money will save you money long term. Another thing that I have found very effective that people complain about on some of the old videos when I talk about it is pellet pistols, and those have only gotten better. Gammo makes some pellet pistols. They're very close clones of Glocks and SIGs. They're close in trigger pull and they're close in operation. They're not perfect, but it's a good understudy if you have nothing else and you want to save money, because a tin of pellets and some CO2 cartridges is way cheaper than 100 rounds in 9mm. And you should have 500 rounds for what you will for 100 rounds in 9mm. It's literally a fifth of the price. Ian News says, speaking of batons, your old baton video was awesome. And there was one really tiny baton that you showed. It looked like a wood baton, the size of a small Maglite. What's the company that made that? Let us see. Probably this one. It's not wood. This is some sort of ABS plastic, and it is unmarked as far as I could tell. Oh, no. It does have a marking on it. It is HWC Enforcer. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that on there. HWC Enforcer. Show it to everybody. That's probably the baton you're talking about. And that's who made it probably 40 years ago. Picked that up from one of the retirees. When we clean out our lockers, if they never occur or anything you don't want, you just leave up on the counter. And that was one of the things in with a pile of shirts with patches ripped off of them because other people had ripped the patches off. I was like, this is cool. So. James Maxwell says, a dime on the front sight is an old trick for mastering trigger control and maintaining sight alignment. Another one is you take a 45 ACP shell casing, put it on the front sight, and it'll let you see, if you're really pulling the trigger off weird. All right, so we're going to go to Instagram really quick before we sign this off. We're at 38 minutes. That's pretty good. My dog's barking upstairs. I'm sorry to everyone that has to listen to my dog bark because I have a full-size poodle and she does not understand the concept of it's nighttime and the other people in the neighborhood live here, so leave them alone. She barks at squirrels and everything else. Good day, morning, whatnot. Greetings from Europe. Hello to Texas V111. The Bondman 007 says, Tommy, forgot about it. All right, who else is here? What do we got? Are you saying that 9mm is the new 38? It kind of is in a way. 9mm is kind of the new 38, and in the same way, people like to load 38 and 357 into rifles and pretend like the bullets are going to work the same way. Of course, when 38 was the big thing for many, many years, lead round nose or, wad cutters or semi-wad cutters were popular, and those actually do perform fairly well out of rifles. They actually perform a little bit better, so it actually made more sense with 38 special. What are we talking about today? We've been talking about it for a while. Gear Junkie 2000 says, any duty belt recommendations? Need something basket weave that isn't junk. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk about the new basket weave duty belts, so we'll leave that we'll just say there'll be videos coming up on that very shortly, very, very shortly. Have some recommendations, some new ones that have come out, and we're going to look at those in the future. Sorry. More coffee. Long day. JSH707 says, what watch do you wear on duty? It's a Casio Mudmaster. Not the solar one. I don't have money like that. But it's a good watch. I like it. Henderson Trenton says, hey man, how much are your patches? If you go to my website, freefieldtraining.com/merch, the patches, they're $10. I think I got a couple of them I still need to ship out. I'm sorry to anyone that hasn't got their patch yet. Texas V111 says, video ideas about searching contraband in vehicles or finding suspicious vehicles would be good for police and gate security. We'll look into that. We'll look into that. I like that idea. Updated police medkit gear. We could look into that. We could look into that. There's other channels that specifically highlight that. Like Prep Medic, for one, would be a good way to get more information about medical equipment. Henderson Trenton says, hey man, we actually carry lever. Here's somebody that does carry a lever action. He says, we actually carry lever actions in the wilderness service here for our Rangers. It suits us pretty well. We also have shotgun and AR in our vehicles as well, depending on the situation. Well, if you need a 45-70, other things probably aren't going to get the job done. We grab different things. It makes sense. That makes sense. I could see if you were going in grizzly bear territory, but I have a hard time believing that an AR-10 platform in 300 mag or something isn't going to do a better job than 45-70. I guess, hey, if you got to work, if you got to use for it, go nuts. But for most law enforcement use, I don't see an application. C. Wilson 1790 says, do you use plus P or plus P plus rounds? I use what's issued to me, unfortunately. So I don't get to pick. How am I doing? I'm doing great. Nelsong Zero says, how many times a month do you recommend going to the range? I recommend going to the range as often as you can afford. However, if you go to the range once a month, I'll tell you, if you go to the range once a month, you are doing better than 99% of people are doing in actuality. So if you aim for there and you fall a little short, you're still doing better than most people. Most good switched on urban SWAT teams will get to the range a couple times a month. So once a month, you're doing better than the vast overwhelming majority of people who don't live at a range. And the only people that I know that go more than once a month are people that live on property where they can just walk out their backyard and shoot, like me. Shut Larissa says, what are your thoughts on the PR-24? I rarely see it anymore, but in my opinion, it's the best baton. They're non-existent now. I haven't seen one in 5-6 years. Even seen one. The last time a buddy of mine tried to go take the class for it, they said the only place that I think Monadnock was offering the class was in Miami, Florida, once a year. Keegman McKenna 13 says, what's your take on the up-and-coming PA 330 police authority? I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming that's Public Act something, and I don't live in California or Pennsylvania, and I'm assuming it's one of those states because that's where everything always happens, and I don't know anything about what that is. Let's see if we got any more here. Fraud Gamer says, what do you think of Chinese man catchers? I've seen those for people armed only with knives. Well, if we even had half the people to show up to those calls that guys they're using the man catcher poles has, I don't think we would have as many problems as we do. But I've already got a car that's fully laden down with stuff, and I don't know where you would put a 6 to 8 foot long pole with a big hook on the end of it. Maybe next to the dog catching pole that the whole agency has two of. Thanks for letting you on their show. You're very welcome, Jake. ISMR Bro says, I started federal contracting. It's mandatory I use the gear provided to me. What's your opinion of mandatory use of provided gear? As long as that gear's not trash, you're all right. But good luck with your Pro 3 holster that every federal contracted security guard seems to be foisted upon by their company. You know, like sometimes it's just they give you just stuff that's just barely good enough to get by, and you're at the whim of whatever pencil pusher thought it was a good idea. And if they're not gun people or baton people or OC spray people or handcuff people, you're going to get the cheapest possible thing that they think they can get away with liability wise. And that's the hard truth of it. Flip side of it is you don't have to pay for it. So I guess you got that going. Outdoor Madness says, graduated from SWIC BLEA 3 weeks ago. and loving every second. Been watching for years now. Keep up the good work, Tommy. You're very welcome. Thank you very much. He also says videos, or whoever it is says videos on searching vehicles sounds good. I will get onto that. Mobikeet says, I just got on here. Why do you think 9mm isn't that good? From brief statement. When the video ends, it will be up and you can watch it. Barranco Carb says, do you use an armor on your duty weapon? If so, how much of an improvement is it over irons? That is an excellent question. About a year ago, I started using a Steiner MPS on my duty pistol. I'm going to have a whole video on the pitfalls and foibles of the Steiner MPS, the Walther PDP, the Alpha Omegas holster that I use, all of it. Had some positives and negatives with all of that equipment. At the end of the day, though, using a 9mm pistol in a modern caliber with a dot optic is just short of, because I don't like using the word game changer because it sounds stupid, I think, but it's just short of something that you could call truly a game changer. My problem is still with the durability, but more on that in future videos. Hello, hello. Hi. And I think that's going to be it. I think we have taken as many of the comments and questions I possibly can. Thank you, everybody, for stopping through. I am going to, this is going to stay up live, at least on YouTube, if I can get YouTube to take it. It's at 46 minutes. That should be fun. And you guys can watch. If you're coming in late now, please go over to YouTube, Free Field Training on YouTube. And it's my newest live video. The thumbnail is going to be a picture, probably a picture of a 9mm shell casing. And it's going to say 9mm ain't that great or ain't that good. It's gonna be bad English, and hopefully that gets people to click on it. We'll see. What's the worst that can happen? You know, didn't cost me anything to make. Until next week, you guys be safe, take care of each other, and don't let your chief issue you one of those 9mm magazine-fed lever action rifles.